Possessive forms are used to indicate ownership or possession of a noun. In English, we'd be talking about words like my, your, his, her, our, etc. As you know very well, German nouns have genders. When you use the word for the, there are several options depending on which gender the noun is that you're trying to use. The same applies to possessive forms. Which form you use will depend on the gender of the noun that follows it. Let's take a look at these forms. We'll start with the list of English forms for reference. Notice the difference between your singular and your plural and your formal. We have to put things in parentheses because we don't actually have different words for these, but the Germans do. Now let's see these same words in German. We'll start with the forms that would go before a masculine or neuter noun, like Vater, Bruder, Hund, Meerschweinchen, Auto, etc. For my we have mine, for your we have dein. His is sein, her is ihr, its is sein. Our is unser, your plural is euer, their is ihr, and your formal is ihr again, but this time it's capitalized. Now let's take a look at these words as they'd appear before feminine or plural nouns in German. Words like Mutter, Schwester, Tante, Katze, Eltern, Großeltern, Autos, etc. My would be meine, your would be deine, his, her, and its become seine, ihre, and seine. Our is unsere, your is eure in the plural form, their is ihre, and your in the formal form is ihre, again capitalized there. It will probably jump out at you pretty quickly that these lists are almost identical. The big difference is that there is an E on the end of all those words on the feminine side now. By the way, eure is an exception. It just switches the E and the R at the end of euer to become eure. A good way to think about this is like the words a and an in English. They don't mean the same thing as any of these words, but what they do have in common with these possessive forms is that a and an mean the same thing as each other, the same way that mine and meine mean the same thing as each other, or dein and deine mean the same thing as each other. Think of how we use a and an in English. We'd say an apple, but a strawberry, not an strawberry or a apple. In other words, whether a has an n or not depends on the word that comes next. The same concept applies to these possessive forms. Whether mine has an E on it or not depends on the word that comes next. If the next word is masculine or neuter, then no E. If the next word is feminine or plural, then you need to add an E. You can say meine Mutter and mein Vater, but you couldn't say meine Vater or mein Mutter. This is basically the same concept as using ein and eine, too. You'll notice, in fact, that mein, dein, and sein are really only one letter different from the word ein, and they follow the same patterns. Let's look at a couple examples in context. First of all, we'll get some sentences ready that have nouns of various genders in them. We'll leave out the possessive forms for a second. The first thing we have to do, before we can use a possessive form, is to be certain of the gender of the nouns we'll be using with them. Schwester is feminine, Bruder is masculine, Meerschweinchen is neuter, Hund is masculine, Eltern is plural, and Autos is also plural. Now that we've got the facts straight, we can start to think about how to use possessive forms. Let's start by saying my. So already, we know that our answers will either be mine or meine. If you'd like to challenge yourself, pause the video now and see if you know what the answers should be. Because Schwester is feminine, we'll need an E on the end of mine, so we have meine Schwester. Bruder is masculine, so we'll just leave it as mein Bruder. Meerschweinchen is neuter, so this will be mine as well, as will Hund, another masculine word. Before plural nouns, though, we need to add an E, so we'll have meine Eltern and meine Autos. If we do the exact same thing with the word for your, dein or deine, the same words will have E's before them. Schwester, Eltern, and Autos will need to be used with deine, since they're feminine and plural. But the masculine and neuter ones, Bruder, Meerschweinchen, and Hund, will be used with dein. Again, notice the pattern with the e's is the same as it was with meine, except now we're saying your, not my. Let's look at this again with the word for his. The first sentence usually tricks some English speakers. They see the word his and start thinking masculine, masculine, masculine. But all the word his does is tell us that we need to use either sein or seine to say that this thing belongs to a male. The gender of Schwester also matters. Since it's feminine, we pick the word for his that goes before feminine nouns, seine. The other ones work just like mine or dein did. When sein goes before a masculine or neuter word, there will be no e on it. But when it goes before a feminine or plural word, there will be an e. Again, to stress this, the word for his depends on the gender of who the thing belongs to. Whether sein has an e on it or not depends on the gender of what belongs to that male person. Finally, let's do this one more time with the words for her. Ihr or ihre. Schwester is still feminine, so we'll use ihre before it, not ihr. Now, with Bruder, people tend to get confused, just like they did with seine Schwester. They see her and think feminine, 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 and assume that everything has to be ihre, because they know that e's have something to do with feminine. But again, the gender of Bruder matters. That's what tells us whether to add an e to ihr or not. In this case, because Bruder is masculine, it will be ihr Bruder, no e. Similarly, with Meerschweinchen and Hund, we'll also use ihr because those are neuter and masculine words. Since Eltern and Autos are plural, we need that e on the end of the possessive form. Again, we've kind of got two genders going on here. The gender of the person the thing belongs to determines whether we use ihr or ihre for her or seine for his. The next word determines whether you put an e on it or not. Okay, time to review. You will need to learn the basic forms of the possessive words in German, mein, dein, sein, ihr, etc., that you'll see in the list on the right. Once you know these, you use the gender of the next word to determine whether you need to add an e to your possessive form or not. You'll add an e before feminine or plural nouns, but not before masculine or neuter nouns.